Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this The Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better, but my god this has been a weekend of non-stop white pills. Because as you can see, Reform absolutely smashed the elections last Thursday, and I mean smashed. I don't think anyone could have imagined a better case scenario. With their very Real Housewives of Cheshire aesthetic, they posted the news that they managed to get 677 new councillors. Technically that's 676, but I'll get into that much later. 10 councils in Reform's control. They have 2 mayors, and of course the 1 MP from the 1 by-election that was won by 6 votes. It's incredible news. Friday was just an incredible day, constantly hearing about getting more and more councils, and it's at a point where all the momentum is behind Reform. All those videos I did, all those tweets I made, effectively saying Reform is the way forward, Reform is going to win this. It might be a slow and steady race, but we'll get there, and they are going to deliver 80 to 90% of what we want anyway, so why not back them? It's being vindicated right now. Right now it's being vindicated, and that's why you should listen to me. Because as far as I'm concerned, everyone who was counter-signalling this, everyone who was saying, oh, Farage isn't the way forward, we need to stop letting Farage be the leader of the right, you don't know what you're talking about. You cannot change this. It is absolutely a disadvantage of Reform that it is effectively all about Nigel Farage. However, when the man builds a team and manages to find an heir, let's say, this is a project that could be long-term, and it could see Britain with decades and decades of prosperity, growth, and generally everything going from basically fineism to, well, a country like we could never have imagined it. Am I putting my expectations too high? Almost certainly, but hey, I'm on an emotional high right now. Everything I've said over the past 8 months is effectively being vindicated, and all the naysayers, they're all backing off and having to effectively regroup, but we'll get into that. Anyway, with these statistics, realistically, the only thing that we could have expected more from is the mayors, but frankly, the vote was being split by Tories. For all the other mayors that we didn't win, it was within a margin of 3%, and Tories were taking 10-12% of the vote, something like that. So that is proof that if you vote Tory, you get Labour. That's the world we live in. That is a world I was told would never happen. I was told by many people who'd voted Tory all their life, or who just could never see any renegade third party coming out of left field, I guess right field here, and taking the top spot of one of the 2 parties. They said it would never happen. Well, the fact of the matter is it's happened before. It happened a century ago with Labour taking over from the Liberals, and now we're here with Reform taking over from the Tories. And as I say, they're all in panic mode, but we'll get to that. But I really do have to comment on the aesthetics that Reform are going for. Here is what they posted once Sarah Pochin was elected for Runcorn and Helsby, which was quite a surprise to quite a lot of people. Although she was favourite with the bookies, it was only within a margin of 6 votes. And before that they thought it was 4, but they recounted and Labour actually lost 2 votes, thank God for that. And I've seen this be called jumpsuit nationalism, and I really quite like that idea, because what they are trying to do here is almost play off your kind of Saturday Night Takeaway, your Britain's Got Talent, your Real Housewives of Cheshire aesthetics, and that's a really, really normie-friendly aesthetics, and it's very camp, it's very 90s, let's say. It's a very feel-good aesthetic, and I like what they're doing with it. It's growing on me. At first I thought it was a bit cringe, but the more they lean into it, the more I think, yeah, this is a party that's going for popularity, and at the end of the day, popularity is how you win elections. So, once again, well done to Sarah Pochin and your team, and to everyone, obviously, who leaflet and canvassed for Reform over the past few weeks. And that includes myself. Well done, me. Anyway, naturally victory laps were taken. Nigel Farage sent out a 3-minute video saying, very well done everyone, but this is just the first of many victories that we need, so please join Reform. And then the next day we ended up at about 230,000 members. And so once again, the momentum just keeps going. I again would argue everyone should be a Reform member, and do your best to get out there and leaflet. That is doing way more than commenting on Twitter. I have found that out myself with my own experience. And it honestly is the best way to see the change in the country that you want, because you keep doing things for Reform, you can rise in the ranks and influence them yourselves if you really want to. It is literally our only chance to beat the left, and in this first victory, that's definitely happened, but we'll get into that. But first, a little bit of trolling from Reform. So Before the election, Labour put out this graphic to say wipe the smile off his face, because obviously Farage was getting a bit too big for his boots, and Labour wanted everyone to vote for them so that they would do badly and he wouldn't have a smile anymore. Anyway, obviously the opposite happened, so Reform put out this graphic saying that they wiped the smile off his face. Again, if there's one thing that Reform is definitely good at doing and is quite Trumpian, they are pretty good at their meme game. And Tice especially seems quite good at trying to do the old Trump trick of effectively trying to force meme names on other people, especially political enemies. And although it's done in a bit more of a cringe and British way, I still think it's quite effective. Anyway, another notable thing is that Zai Yousef's been all over the media after this win this week, and that's because it's largely thanks to him that the party machine has professionalised in the way it has, managed to get the most candidates out of all parties, and not only that, also managed to win the most council seats. And being on the inside of the machine to some extent, it was professional. It's nothing you'd see outside of what Tories and Labour already have, but again, they're centuries-old institutions. Reform started, 4 years ago, something like that? I guess 2019 if we're counting Brexit Party. And instead of having all these paper candidates that you had within the general election last time, an awful lot of these candidates, obviously you have some paper ones, but an awful lot of these candidates are indeed people who are going out and expecting, maybe not expecting to win, but knowing that there was a high chance they would win, and they're actually trying to work professionally as a councillor. This is all down to Zai Yousef, and obviously here he's more talking about what reform policies are probably going to look like. And here he says young people need a moral re-education. Zai Yousef says schools will teach a love of Britain if Farage becomes PM, and that is something that I have been begging for years. My own reading into our history was far better than anything I learned at school. Bear in mind I didn't take history from GCSE onwards, but that's because I found it so boring learning about Henry VIII 4 times in 4 different years. I still don't really understand what's so interesting about him. It wasn't even Henry VIII that split the church properly in England. That was more Elizabeth I, but you wouldn't know that from the way history education's done in the UK. And I mean, seriously, just listen to what Zar Yousef says to the Times here. How many times do you see a statue of a truly great Britain from the past being erected in Trafalgar Square? You see the opposite. You see crazy modern art. I mean, if people want to go around and enjoy modern art, cool, go enjoy that, but don't put it in Trafalgar Square. Thank you very much, Yousef. I have indeed been complaining about that for 8 years. How many young people know who Isambard Kingdom Brunel is, which I find really funny because he was actually mentioned by Jamie in Adolescence, which is how I knew that it was written by people who'd not been to school for 10, 20 years, something like that. Look at the character assassination that have occurred on the legacy of Sir Winston Churchill by both the left and the right there. And yes, indeed, it's horrendous. The fact that they have to cover up his statue because they don't want to provoke protesters, I mean, that's the sort of utterly indefensible so-called leadership that we've had, and young people feel that in their bones. I definitely think there's some truth to that. I still remember Aaron Bastani, he interviews young people in the street all the time, and a lot of them really are on the side of, I just want to feel proud of Britain, but I don't feel like I can. And Reform are the way forward with that, so I reckon they'll grow with the younger people that are genuinely patriotic. He then goes on to say gender dysphoria is not a problem in China, despite TikTok pushing it in the West, and it is a massive problem in the West, which is correlated with the use of social media. That is absolutely true, by the way. It's been looked into by Jonathan Haidt and other psychologists. It's a problem, and social media seems to be the root of it. Pointing to this as an example of where Britain needs to act in the national interest, he says the TikTok algorithm is presenting completely different content to children in China, and what sort of content is it? It's encouraging children to become scientists. Yep. I mean, I go on TikTok almost daily, and yeah, you get put forward a load of these are my disabilities, how I live with it, or you might have ADHD because you leave clothes on the floor, things like that. Do you have more than one drink at a time? You might have ADHD. Oh, do you not like loud noises? You might have autism and things like that, and it's probably not doing wonders for kids' brains. And obviously he goes on about puberty blockers, but to be honest with you, I think the whole trans issue is largely defeated now anyway. But it's good to see that he's saying effectively things I've been saying as well for 8 years. This is why I really like Zai Yousef. Not only is he saying the things that I like to hear and agreeing with Nigel Farage on an awful lot of things and things I like to hear, he has created an entire party structure that can win and implement all these ideas that I like to hear. But of course, the big issue is immigration, and among the more radical proposals being drawn up by Reform is a bold zero-tolerance plan to deport all illegal immigrants in 5 years, and a move he compares to that undertaken by Barack Obama. The US president was called the deporter-in-chief after more than 3 million non-citizens were removed from the country during his time in office from 2009 to 2017. Yousef, who has previously described himself as a Muslim patriot, says that this will involve leaving the ECHR and striking out other international treaties and articles so that no matter how activist the judge, there is no room for interpretation about preventing these people from getting deported. He also claims the party will use the Navy to support humanitarian missions in the Channel. Let me be really clear, we're putting people here in the country illegally on notice. A Reform government with Nigel as our leader will deport every single one of them within 5 years. He said a big part of that will be basically, we've got to declare a national emergency. If you have at least 1.2 million people here illegally, that is a national emergency territory. We will have to deal with it. The social contract in this country is fraying at the edges right now. And a big issue is immigration. I know the classic retort is, oh, what about legal immigration? Yeah, well, in the exact same conference where this was originally announced, they also said, we've still got the net zero cap, however it looks like more people are leaving than we thought, so we might actually go further and have to have net outflows. That was, at the very least, implied very heavily. Net outflows was not said, however they said they'd have to look at it, and there's no way that if they're mentioning more people are leaving than they thought, they'd think, oh, we'll have more people in then. There's no way. I have said for months now that Reform are serious about deportations, they are serious about reducing migration. I mean, for God's sake, it's what Nigel Farage is known for. And I don't know a single person who's under the illusion that Reform are pushing for anything else. I mean, again, Yousef on the interview train. Reform promises to do everything it can to close migrant hotels. Zai Yousef said it would use judicial reviews and injunctions in council areas it now controls, but has admitted their powers were limited. What he's saying is that if you end up with migrants in hotels in these Reform areas, blame it all on Labour. The Home Office has to overrule them. The ball is very much in Labour's court, and that's just going to get people to hate Labour even more. But it's all they can do at the moment. You get them in national government, you've seen what they promise with illegals, what's your option? Anyway, another thing that Zai Yousef announced was that Reform-controlled English councils will move at speed to resolve that the only flag permitted to be flown on or in buildings will be the Union Jack and St George's flag. No other flags will be permitted to be flown on its flagpoles, balconies, reception desks or council chamber walls. Now, the thing with this is that the first thing that people were all asking was, what about county council flags? For example, Tom Tugendhat, among with many other Tories, asked things like, the White Horse has been the symbol for Kent for almost 2,000 years. The first king of Kent, Hengest, is said to have used the flag as he and his brother Horsa conquered their new kingdom. Denying our flag is denying our history, and you're just splitting hairs at this point. Obviously, Zai Yousef is going on about, the gay flag, foreign flags like the Pakistani flag sometimes has been flown. Even the Israeli and Ukraine flags have been flown as well. To be honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked if there is the odd exemption of if, say, Poland gets nuked by Russia. I think they'll allow county councils to fly the Polish flag for a week or something. But it's more the spirit of the thing. These councils represent Britain and England. Those are the two flags that should mainly be flown. Obviously, they represent councils and counties as well. Therefore, the county flags are obviously okay. And in fact, Reform clarify this in another post, where Reform UK stated that councils will only be able to fly the Union Jack, St George's flag and county flags. We are proud of our country and history. Labour and Tories want to stop this. Yeah, because each one has an officially affiliated LGBT community. And I'm not being funny, whenever I've gone... Well, I say whenever I've gone anywhere, it happens in my local area too. There's gay flags everywhere. Sometimes you see more Ukrainian flags than British flags in some council buildings and things like that. It was everywhere. I want to see more British flags. It may be biscuit tin nationalism, but my God, you used to see these flags everywhere. And they then stopped over the past 20 years or so. Not stopped, but certainly was put as a second-rate flag compared to others. And Reform UK just want to bring back that sense of national pride, and the way to do that is to have flags everywhere. The Americans do it. I don't know why people think it's cringe. Anyway, another way to attack Reform was Andrea Jenkins came out and said there will be no more environmental, climate change or DEI jobs that will take place in Lincolnshire, and this is obviously going to happen to other councils as well. And there was a news story that new Reform Mayor Andrea Jenkins vows to sack council's diversity officers, except there aren't any. And this was easily disprovable, but Andrea Jenkins did it herself anyway, saying, "The independent newspaper are not correct on this. North Lincolnshire Council have them, and I've been told by the employees that the leadership pressure staff to wear rainbow lanyards too. They also have diversity officers named as outreach officers, see below," and she links a Facebook link. I don't really care to look into it. It was obviously a lie. Every council has these jobs. Every council has these officers. You can go on LinkedIn and find these people. It's really not difficult. People were doing it all over the replies of people posting this article. And I'm glad Andrea Jenkins just called them out on their nonsense straight away. This is what we're going to see more of, especially with them in power. Andrea Jenkins, Sarah Pochin as well probably, and any councillor you can find, definitely worth following. Anyway, now it's time to go into each party's reaction to all this. I say each party's. I'm not bothering with the Lib Dems because I don't think anyone even knows what they're about these days. I've known of no one who can tell me any policy that they actually have. So I'm going to look at the more interesting ones and even include Greens in that, but that's more to laugh at them. So Starmer's reaction, well, is largely summed up in these 3 paragraphs written by him for the Times. Nearly a year into this government, there is real tangible proof that things are finally beginning to go in the right direction. I don't know what the hell he means. I barely got a raise this year because national insurance contributions were cited as a reason that they couldn't give me one as high as they would like. So thank you for that, Starmer. I've had people in my comments telling me they've lost jobs over it. Supermarkets have come out saying they've had to close cafes and make massive changes to the way that they run their business because of how much this is costing. It's been nothing but bad news, bad news, and bad news. I don't know what he means by the right direction. We've had 3 interest rates cuts, okay? Wages are rising faster than prices. I don't think that's true. I mean, that might only be true because of how much they're paying more or promising to pay more to the public sector. But guess what they've done? They've said that's still not good enough and so are striking again. So well done there. NHS waiting lists have come down 6 months in a row. Okay. I'm not really seeing people say, oh, the NHS is notably faster now, though. So this might be just playing around with statistics. Immigration numbers are down. That's definitely not true for boats crossing the channel. Just last week, the boss of the world's largest investment company said his confidence in the UK economy is higher than it was a year ago. Okay. Oh, I just checked that link. That was BlackRock CEO Larry Fink. Yeah, I get the feeling he says that because Labour were having meetings with Larry Fink, and I would not be shocked if he's putting a lot of investment in certain areas of the UK, and Labour are allowing him to go a bit carte blanche on that, let's say. He, like other investors, is backing those words with real money. Basically, this is all stuff that people either do not believe or, frankly, the bad outweighs the good too much. Am I satisfied with where we are? Not even close. I'm acutely aware that people are yet to feel the benefits. That's what they told us last night. Until they do, I will wake up every morning determined to go further and faster. And it was quite funny. I can't quite find the quote. I can't remember who said it, but there were Labour MPs who were saying, no, don't go further and faster. What you are delivering people hate. So it's actually a change in direction that they probably want. That is the difference. I'm not going to navel gaze or turn inward. I'm going to deliver for you and your family. More money in your pocket. That's literally the opposite has happened, by the way. Costs have gone up and I did not get a decent raise. So I think I'm actually going to be poorer this year than last year. I'm yet to do my spreadsheet properly. Lower NHS waiting lists, lower immigration numbers. The path we are on may not always be smooth, but it will take us to the place we want. Nobody believes you. So this has been Starmer's reaction to this. It's effectively put his head in the sand and carry on with his, I guess, long slow motion suicide of the party, which I'm happy to watch. Anyway, in another Times article, they mentioned that in the coming weeks, Labour will come out firing on the NHS, levying attack ads at Farage about his previous support for the change in the way the health service is funded. Which I'm not being funny, but we are definitely on the verge of that just being a popular opinion. People are understanding the NHS has sucked for years, and no party seems to be able to come in and fix it, and it's probably because of the way it's funded. There will also be new legislation cracking down on illegal immigration. Well, they need that because they made it worse. And a defence pact with the European Union. But we've actually had news today that the European Union are probably not going to go through with that, so that's fallen through. A cabinet reshuffle is expected in late June. Oh my God. Which is not good within your first year. We predicted at the Worcester Club a reshuffle because of how bad Labour were doing. It's coming actually a bit earlier than we thought. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, is set to lose her job over the handling of school reforms. Peter Carr, the Blairite Loyalist Science Secretary, is tipped to replace her. There will certainly be others as well. Starmer's team also want to abolish the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, splitting it between the Business Department, Education Department and Treasury, allowing them to fire Lisa Nandy, the Secretary of State. I don't know why he doesn't like Lisa Nandy. She is definitely not the worst Labour MP at the moment, but we will get into that story. But you can see clearly there is a reaction here that Labour are trying not to show that they're panicking, but they're clearly panicking because they don't know what to do. They got into power, their plan was hit like a ton of bricks with the reality of the economy, which again they wanted to make worse with what the Tories were doing. Now they're in power and literally making it worse. They don't know what to do. It turns out their ideology does not fit in with the jigsaw of reality, and trying to go back on it is too humiliating for them to go through, but if they don't go back on it, they will lose everything to reform. So I hope they don't go back on it. While this reshuffle is going on, nothing has been said about Ed Milliband, even though he is being told by union bosses that his deadline is unrealistic. And to put it in a much less nice way, it's swivel-eyed lunacy, frankly. Gary Smith, head of the GMB, warned that Britain could face blackouts like those seen in Spain last week. And to all those people in my comments of that video that I did on the Spanish blackout saying it had nothing to do with net zero, it was pretty much everything to do with net zero. My point was that it is expensive, and also to make it reliable, it's even more expensive, and it's going to cause energy prices to keep rocketing. But this is Ed Miliband, who doesn't realise that if you tax something, it puts the wholesale price of that thing up. The man is an idiot. And there's also been whispers coming through the grapevine that basically everyone in Labour hates Ed Miliband because he's one of those people that's very incompetent, but very highly functioning incompetent. So he is very good at doing a bad job because he is delivering stuff that is making everything worse for Labour. And so stories like this are kind of the first you would expect to see if they're going to go back on the net zero thing. But doing that, Reform are just going to say, you may as well vote for us because we're ahead of the curve on that. Which is probably going to be what you see. Well, in fact, it's what you've been seeing for quite a while and why I think they've done so well. Clearly, everyone is moving to the Reform position from the left, and even trying to flank them on the right, as some people say, despite the fact they are literally just saying the exact same thing as Reform and refusing to go any further right. It's ridiculous, the stories I have heard from the dork right about what is going on in British politics. None of it's true and nobody buys it. But I'll save my complaints for the dork right at the end of the video. For now, we're complaining about Labour. So yeah, Miliband has to go, but he probably won't because, frankly, he probably has too much sway in the Labour Party. He was leader at one point, bear in mind. Anyway, another big-brained idea comes from Louise Hey, the ex-Transport Secretary, who got kicked out for her history of fraud, saying Keir Starmer must tear up Labour's pledge not to raise taxes to see off an existential threat from Nigel Farage. Yes, I'm sure that fighting off Nigel Farage by raising taxes is definitely the way forward. In her first intervention since resigning as Transport Secretary, Louise Hey attacked the Prime Minister over the government's welfare reforms and his decision to means-test the winter fuel allowance. Writing in the Times, she called on the Prime Minister to rip up Labour's self-imposed tax rules which prevent the government raising income tax, VAT or national insurance. Yeah, that's definitely not going to annoy working people. This, she said, could allow a serious programme of investment and reindustrialisation that would show voters the government was fighting on their side. I know so many people thinking about moving country. I think taxing them more would unironically send an awful lot of them over the edge. It's certainly making me think for the first time, is it even worth staying here? But hey, in 4 years' time I could be pulling levers of power here, so I may as well stay. Haig is the most senior Labour MP so far to criticise the Prime Minister for his response to last week's election, in which the party lost 167 council seats. Yeah, they didn't even reach winning 100 seats, They won double figures with the amount of seats that they won. It was not good. And it comes as concerns that the Labour Party is risking hemorrhaging votes to Farage's party. I don't see how moving more left-wing is going to fix that, but hey, I'm not expecting smart people in the Labour Party. However, to be fair, there are some people with the right idea in the Labour Party, with Jonathan Hinder breaking ranks to say that his party is hyper-liberal and ignoring voters' concerns about immigration, calling for basically reform policy light. A migration freeze, so net zero immigration, that's literally reform policy. ECHR reform or exit, that's not even Tory light, that's Jamrick light to be fair, but that is definitely Reform light, where they just want to exit. This guy is clearly asking at least for some reform. A shutdown of asylum hotels, again, Reform policy, and a yearly refugee cap, again, Reform policy. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really mind the Labour Party trying to steal and implement Reform's ideas, because all that's going to show is that Reform were ahead of the curve. This is exactly what we said we wanted to do, but we'll actually go further than the Labour Party, who clearly are full of people that have no idea what you actually want or how to implement it. We will just do this and go further like you want. So please, Labour, go ahead and do this. I mean, honestly, I think both parties are in a rock and a hard place. I think it's too late for both of them. I don't think they can do anything that will make people sincerely think that effectively they're going to do what Reform want, but better. You know, if you want what Reform wants, you may as well just vote Reform, because they've been betrayed by Labour and Tory too many times. So they can do this, and I do hope they do this, because it will help fix the problem. But not only that, it will make Reform come in and stick the landing when they get in to sort out this problem, because they'll have basically a bit of a head start on it, which may shoot themselves in the foot in the long term as well. This is all very funny, but I don't think there's anything else they can do to actually try and save their votes. But the absolute worst news to come from Labour has definitely been Lucy Powell on Any Questions on BBC Radio 4. And Charlie Peters introduces it here, you can read it if you want, but really, I think you need to listen to believe this.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary on Channel 4 about rape gangs over
No,
this.
we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Yeah,
okay. There is a real issue.
Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?
Look, okay, Lucy.
Yeah, that is Lucy Powell MP, the current leader of the House of Commons, saying that bringing up a Channel 4 documentary on the grooming gangs and how the councils did everything from ignore the issue to cover it up is apparently a little trumpet and a dog whistle, which was the mask completely slipping from Lucy Powell's face to show that she really does not care about these girls. Which, if you want to understand why the Reform Party managed to get nearly 700 councils, take control of 10 and get an MP, it is exactly the types of things like this. Get an MP in a safe seat, by the way, where the last time it didn't have a Labour MP was 1979. Literally, Margaret Thatcher couldn't even hold on to Runcorn, and yet the Tories have managed to take over after they've had enough of Labour clearly not being interested in their issues. Lucy then had to apologise to Twitter, saying, in the heated discussion on Any Questions, I would like to clarify that I regard the issue of child exploitation and grooming with the utmost seriousness. It's quite funny how she's saying child exploitation and grooming. Tim Montgomery, who was he worked in the Tory party to some level, but then joined Reform, and people saw him as a bit of a wet, but in reality he brought up rape gangs in front of Labour MPs, so give him that. But she's now talking about grooming and child exploitation rather than how it was actually phrased in the show, which was rape, but there we go. I'm sorry if I was unclear, I was challenging the political point scoring around it, not the issue itself. I mean, again, it's amazing to even think that people are political point scoring on Labour helping cover up the rape gang issue, of which Lucy Powell is literally doing in that show. This is why nobody believes her. Basically, nobody believed this apology, by the way. As a constituency MP, I've dealt with horrendous cases. This government is acting to get to the truth and deliver justice. Oh, is it trying to do that by cancelling the regional inquiries it promised and not having a national inquiry? Is that what's happening here? Yeah, nobody trusts this. This did more damage to Labour than I think anything that they have done in the past 10 years. This one simple thing, I have seen nobody say that anything positive about it. This has to be one of the worst things that anyone has seen from Labour, and for it to happen 3 days after Reform are making ins in a whole bunch of councils doesn't bode well for the future. I have to say one of the most interesting things is that Lucy Powell was actually tweeting about the child abuse in Oxford before it came out in the J report, and she even mentions cases in Rochdale, Rotherham and elsewhere. Bear in mind she is a Manchester MP, so Rochdale is actually quite close to her constituency and therefore should probably be quite close to her top issues. And she called for an inquiry back in 2013, which to be fair was before the J inquiry, which was released in 2014. But you go 12 years later and the culture of Labour clearly turned you around from caring about this sort of thing to, well, having to help downplay the crimes. Anyway, Labour's favourite paper, The Guardian's ex-editor, Michael White, had this to say on the subject of the rape gangs. It was horrible, Paul, but it was a bit more complicated than that, wasn't it? Sex often is. He's talking about the rape of girls as young as 12. He's describing that as sex. I think I'm just going to leave that comment hanging in the air. This is The Guardian ex-editor. I think he left The Guardian in 2016 or something like that. This is just the prevailing view of the left. They think it's a dog whistle for anti-Muslim sentiment. It absolutely is for some people. However, the normie really doesn't want girls raped. So you can't go on about that. You can maybe only go on about that with Tommy Robinson, and that's pretty much it. There's no way you're going to do it with Nigel Farage, and you're definitely not going to manage it with Zai Yousef. But describing these rapes as sex, yeah, that is... I don't even know. I'm just speechless. I'm completely speechless. I don't know what to comment on this. It's the most horrific thing I've seen on Twitter. And this is a Labour supporter, and this is largely how people view Labour, as these crimes are acceptable because we don't want to have a go at diversity. That is the prevailing view, and this is why Reform are making loads of inroads. So thank you for confirming it again. Literally today he tweeted that. It's unbelievable. Anyway, other people in left-wing media are trying to beg the Labour Party not to shift right. Please don't shift right. In fact, no, do shift right, because that looks really insincere. If you stay left, you still seem insincere, and you might actually get votes back from the Greens. It's a bit of a coin toss. It's a rock and a hard place. They're not going to do well next time, but do I want the Labour completely destroyed to make way for the Greens, or do I want them as containment for the Greens? I don't know which is better. Either way, it's really funny. The answer to these bruising election results is to govern as a party of social democracy. Yeah, man. Like, we haven't had that for the last 20 years. So there are 5 steps that the New Statesman suggests. The first is the hardest, and that is acknowledging that the voters are always right. Well, the voters are right-wing compared to the Labour Party, so what are you going to do about that? Labour has to recognise its mistakes, apologise for them and repair the damage. The only way to begin is to restore trust is to recognise that the cut to winter fuel allowance was a defining moment for Starmer and making the Labour government seem cruel. Again, to be honest, I'm on the side of I don't think people would really mind the winter fuel allowance if that money wasn't being taken away to fund hotels to put migrants in. I really don't think people would mind having the winter fuel allowance taken away from them if it's clear the money was to be used for foreigners. The second step is to start promoting Labour policies that are popular. It turns out there are plenty of them. They don't ever seem to get a prominent place in the number 10 communications grid. Renting reform? Oh, God. New rights for workers? Oh, no. Pay increases for teachers, doctors and nurses? No, people definitely hate that. Raising the national minimum wage to 65% of the median wage? Oh, my God, what is that? We're talking somewhere in the range of £20 an hour for the median hourly wage. So they want that raised to about £13. I mean, it's already £12. Has that made people want to vote for them? I don't think so. Great British Energy, well, that's dying a death because they can't afford it. Nationalising rail and steel. Nationalising steel, definitely. Rail's a really odd one because it's already nationalised, but nobody seems to know that. It's time to stop being radical by stealth. I really don't think that the country is kind of communist insofar as they don't want to see people in poverty. But I think people really are bored of being taxed up to the hilt to have that privilege be given out to people who've never lived in the country. Third, start using ministers responsible for those policies to promote them. Just promote left-wing stuff, fine. Right, let's carry on. Fourth, once Labour government accepts its key to success is social democracy, as if they're not pushing that right now, they've just run out of money for it, then it can start to develop a domestic doctrine. Part of the success of Starmer's government internationally is that David Lammy framed Labour's approach as progressive realism. I don't think anybody's happy with the Chagos Islands. What the hell do you mean? That works well for all international policy, whether defence and security, trade aid or geopolitics. The challenge when looking at reform agendas of Wes Streeting, Mahmood, Phillipson, Kendall, blah blah blah, is to identify the common principle or ideology uniting them. Even the Tories had one, levelling up, which they never bothered with. They spent more on migrant hotels than levelling up, by the way. It was crazy. They never did it. Modern social democracies should be should be unashamed in their aim to reduce inequality. God. Inequality is lower now than it was at the end of Thatcher's reign. Honestly, I'm so fed up of hearing about equality. Yeah, keep going on about equality. That's definitely what people want. Finally, regret isn't enough. Policy missteps must be reversed. How do you do that? Start by finding the money. Oh, great. That's what they're trying to do. But they can't find it because they've self-imposed rules, which thank God they have, because they'd go much more lunatic on the whole thing and put us in a worse position. But what do you mean just find the money? It's always been clear Reeves won't change her fiscal rules. The Trump-induced global economic turbulence makes that even less likely. I'm not being funny, but they were in trouble before Trump. The spring statement showed an alternative route. Over $3 billion of headroom was approved by the OBR because of changes to planning laws and regulations, and then they had to cut it again. If it can be done once, it can be done twice. How? What, by deregulating more? Is that what you want as Social Democrats? I don't think so. Other cabinet ministers can be similarly tasked. What, for instance, would be the economic benefit of completing HS2? Oh my god. The one major infrastructure project Britain has, and it's just stop that. We need to think about equality. In a time when we've had more redistribution of wealth than ever before, stop making the actual useful things. Or creating a progressive free trade area with Canada and Australia with their new governments. Finally, it took you a few attempts, but you got some good policy. Yeah, Kanzuk would be ideal, I agree. They just have to get rid of their liberals first. But this is seriously all the left wing can do at this point. Either basically try and become reform but look nice about it, or go further with all of their policies that are making the country worse. Total rock and hard place. This is why basically everyone that isn't in the public sector votes anyone but Labour. Maybe some of them vote Green as well, but that's besides the point. If you're in the private sector, reform's looking really good, because as much as they will know nurses and are friends with nurses, say, and other people in the public sector, they really do feel like, I know I feel this way, they feel hard done by because the public sector seem to get everything, while effectively working less productively than the private sector. There's a massive gap now, and the private sector's skyrocketed with their productivity, whereas the public sector's stayed the same pretty much since COVID. So something has to be done there. Anyway, if they're not being idiotic on policy, they're being idiotic about, well, everything else. Carol Cadwallader, who had to give Aaron Banks literally thousands of pounds because she libelled him, said, "An absolute masterclass in how the UK media platforms and normalises far-right politics. This is how Farage wins." I do not think Farage is winning because The Observer made a magazine cover saying Reform did well at elections. I'm going to be honest with you here. Reform have been taking a beating from mainstream media for some time now, and even from some alternate media platforms like Politics Joe, who are just the baby MSM. It's ridiculous to think the mainstream media has been pushing reform. This is how you know reform is largely an organic and grassroots movement. In fact, I know it is myself. How do I know? I've literally been part of it. It's hardly astroturfed. Most of the donations they've got are people defecting away from the Tories, because again, they're fed up with the Tories not delivering what they want, so they'll move where they think they will get it delivered, and clearly that's with reform. The early movers must be feeling so vindicated by now. Honestly, the Treasurer, Nick Candy, he was out canvassing as well, actually. These are people that believe in the project, and don't be under any illusion, I don't think they're going to end up betraying us like the Tories did. If there are betrayals, I think they will be quite small scale and stuff that people don't really care about. I kind of hope they betray everyone on what they're going to do with energy policy, because I think that's some of their weakest part. And maybe PR as well. Keep with first past the post. I hope they betray us on that promise as well. Some betrayal's good, actually, is what I'm saying. That might be a cope, but I don't care. I'm on an emotional high. Anyway, I think at this point I will move on to the alternative left, the Greens. And the funniest thing I saw about the Greens was a saving grace some ministers believe is that the Greens are underperforming. And this is a quote: "I think we are extraordinarily fortunate that the Green Party is shocking." But they didn't use that S word. One minister said, "If they had any kind of charismatic or populist leadership, we'd be 8 to 10 points further down the polls. I would still believe we could squeeze that vote if it came to it, but we should be aware that they may be voters who simply will not turn out for us." So yeah, thinking, God, this could have been worse if the Greens were actually competent. Yeah, that's really scary for Labour, if I'm honest with you. They're already hemorrhaging votes. It's just hilarious. But Green Party reaction to this is basically Kora Dena, the co-leader at the moment, saying, "Oh, we have 859 Green councillors, which is actually more than Reform. It's less than 200 more than Reform. And again, this was an election for something like 10% of council seats. Yeah, I would not be tweeting this if I were you. You are asking for this to be tweeted in a few years to say, yeah, do you still have more council seats than Reform? Because the answer's going to be no, inevitably. Anyway, the deputy leader of the Green Party, Zack Palansky, has decided to come out with a bold leadership campaign, and he's saying he's going to be running to be the next leader of the Green Party. I don't even think that the Green Party are having a leadership election at the moment. I think he's just coming out and saying, wow, us Greens were pretty bad. Let's do something about it. But I'm not going to bother going through his video because I don't really care. What I am going to tell you is that Zack has a really funny bit of lore where he used to be a hypnotherapist and used to hypnotise women to try and enlarge their breasts. I'm not joking, you can Google that. It's about the funniest thing and the only thing I care about this man. I think if he leads the Green Party, he's probably going to kill it, to be honest with you. The issue with the Green Party is that they're just full of weirdos, and so weirdos effectively vote for them. Some good-meaning weirdos, don't get me wrong, but they were either hyper-obsessive environmentalists who care about literally nothing else, just saving the planet, you know, those climate cultist types, or they are just weirdos who want weed to effectively be free in Britain. And I think even this guy's going to be a bit too weird for them, but I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, now I will move more to the right, I suppose, or certainly more to the right of Greens. We'll touch upon the Tories, because again, I can't bring myself to care about them these days. They got destroyed, and insiders say Badenoch spent much of Friday doom-scrolling on her phone, which at least makes her very relatable. But again, probably not what you should be doing as a leader. Robert Jenrick again was just... Robert Jenrick was again just being the actual leader of the Tory party, saying he went out to do a series of live interviews, which he did, and he was good, because Robert Jenrick is good. The problem with Robert Jenrick is that his history is mostly not good, and so again, it's hard to see him as sincere. We're at a time when there is a lot of trust issue with the Tories. I think the best thing for the Tories to do is get a complete outsider in there. Someone like Katie Lamb would probably be a better out-of-left-field leader for the Tories than Robert Jenrick. I probably have more trust in her than Robert Jenrick. But there we go. Aid says she wants to learn lessons, and donors who have sat out the local elections were rallying round, handing over £500,000 in recent days. And it's still not enough, and they're probably going to have to close offices. One of the greatest and longest-lasting institutions in the world, frankly brought down by Cameron. And most Tory boys I speak to, they really want Cameron back. I think that is going to be the final nail in the coffin if they actually do that, and I cannot tell you how much I'd laugh about it. The Tory spokesperson said they'd be viewing Farage as an amusing TV show host. I think it means the voters here, but they don't want him in charge of their money or their lives. Well, they do. They just won 677 councillors. Some remember how UKIP ran Thanet Council into the ground. Yeah, sure, let's take a look at how councils are doing now. Oh, wow, they're all in debt. Okay. We knew these would be a tough set of results, but they have also shown the sheer scale of contempt for Starmer and this failing Labour government. I'm sorry, you got decimated. You did... Okay, you won more seats than Labour, sure, but that's because Labour made sure that a lot of the Labour councils were postponed due to some messing around with borders. The thing is that they postponed absolutely every single one they were planning to change the borders on, even if it's 3 years into the future. If it was just those next year that were changing border, it would be fair enough, but clearly Labour did not want this result to look as bad as it did anyway. It's so funny. This is the opportunity for the Tories now, must not miss by turning in on ourselves. Yeah, this is definitely something I've been hearing. It's a toss-up between half the Tory party effectively saying, just get Jenrick in now, Badenoch's absolutely useless, we need someone who's actually got to be firm on a lot of the issues we care about, and the other half effectively being Brenda saying, oh God, not another election. Because moving around with leaders as much as the Tories have, it's just going to make them look as chaotic as they always were. And it just makes the members look like idiots who voted in the worst person that they could. I didn't think Badenoch would be this bad, but that's where we're up to. We're up to the point where, effectively, the only reason not to change Badenoch is to stop things looking chaotic, not because she's any good. Which is hilarious. Badenoch will now focus on amending the data bill to ban access to social media for under-16s. Fine. She is also close to making a big play on pulling the UK out of the ECHR. why not just vote Reform? And we'll soon unveil details of a Tory policy commission on the ECHR and other lawfare issues, including Climate Change Act and Human Rights Act. Why not just vote Reform? That's her smash glass panic response, a source said. Her smash glass panic response is to copy Reform. This is how ridiculous politics is at the moment. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is just moving to the Reform position. Even the dork right, but we'll get into that soon. Anyway, that's all I care to go into on the Tories. Next up, Lib Dems. I mean, you can read that if you want, but effectively all it says is Lib Dems are comfortable with their position in party politics in Britain, which is effectively having the nice rural middle class vote, where they can comfortably win seats because they're the party that make people feel nice. And so Ed Davey is still going to not particularly talk about policy and instead go around on slipping sides and scooters, trying to look like he's having fun. In fact, it was a hobby horse he was doing last. It was a hobby horse. And they're just a bit of a joke party. Effectively, they may as well be the monster raving loony party, but instead of being for absolute lunatics, they will instead be for lunatics that effectively have a triple-digit IQ. Having said that, their policy to ban people playing music loudly on trains and instead of wearing headphones, that being a crime that is punishable by fine, I think everyone can get on board with that. So I will give them that. They are the party of Middle England who just want to be left alone. Fair enough. But they are not a serious political party, and I don't think they're anywhere close to being that again, and I think they've accepted that since the whole coalition government. Right, finally, 40 minutes later, I can talk about the whole issue with the 677 councillors turning into 676. So, Donna Rachel posted this to Twitter, and it's an essay, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but she starts off by saying this. Yesterday I woke up feeling proud to be one of Reform's 677 new councillors. This morning I woke up with an email from Reform UK head office advising me that I've been suspended from the party pending investigation. Why? Because I urged people on here to lend Reform their support for the short term for Thursday's election, even if they felt they couldn't for the long term. According to the head office, this has brought the party into disrepute and damaged the interests of the party. Let's be clear here, this is not me who has brought the party into disrepute. The party leader did this when they unceremoniously ditched Ben Habib. Didn't happen, Habib left of his own accord. And again when they suspended Rupert Lowe. That's slightly more accurate. Our hardest working and most popular MP back in March. Don't necessarily know how true that is, but he is a good MP. His suspension provoked a wave of resignations. Branches resigned in protest. She was tempted herself, but hoped things might yet improve. And so this is her overall point. Reform will ban people unceremoniously for not much bad. This is despite Ben Habib not being kicked from the party, and this is despite Rupert Lowe openly counter-signalling the party when he was still their MP. And a lot of these people that resigned, it turns out that they were interim leaders and branch members, officers I should say, who resigned because effectively there were branch elections coming up and they'd probably be kicked out anyway. That's largely what happened with a lot of them, but you get the idea here. Anyway, some people decided to look into some of her past tweets, where just a week ago, literally 3 days before the election, she was just openly saying on Twitter, I'm a Reform candidate, but I'm waiting for Rupert and Ben to give us a real alternative and then I'll defect. I'm far from being the only one. She's just openly on Twitter saying, yeah, vote Reform now because I'm a councillor, but I'm defecting as soon as I can. Do you think the party is going to tolerate that? I mean, honestly, there is one thing, and I mean this, there is one thing that seems to be a common denominator with all the people who backed Lowe and Habib, and that is that they have absolutely no idea how to navigate the political electoral system, nor realistically how to win power in Parliament or councils. They have no idea. And this is true of Homeland as well, of course. The right has decided to try and splinter over the past 8 months, and what this has proved is that it's all just Twitter talk. It's total nonsense. You go anywhere close to real life, everyone's just like, yeah, I want a viable alternative that realistically looks like it's going to get power. Nigel Farage, yeah, he's won elections before, let's go with him. You're never going to do this with Rupert or Ben. It's never going to happen. They are not popular enough. I know Ben's thinking about doing the Integrity Party stuff and all that. I can't see it happening now. I don't know why he'd bother. Reform have been completely vindicated. They have 676 councillors, 10 councils, an MP again, and 2 mayors. It's unbelievably good work. This was the best result. This was better, actually, than anyone's highest expectations were. They've nailed it. There's no way Ben's going to try and make another party. It'd be pointless. Where's it going to go? So he's just made GB Pack, who keep claiming they don't want to split the right, and yet Donna is actually a regional organiser for GB Pack, and here she is saying, yeah, we don't want Reform to be part of it. Well, what are they going to say about that now? You know, they've been counter-signalling Reform for months, and now they're at a point where it's pointless counter-signalling them because clearly the damage they've been trying to do is not working. Anyway, realism be damned, Donna still decided to host a Twitter space saying, parties be damned, getting our country back is what matters most. I'm hosting a space this evening on how best to unite the right. Join me and let's figure it out. And I just find this ridiculous. The right is united. The right's united behind Reform. There's splinters on the online world. The online world does not matter. I've been banging this drum for so long that I feel like my arm is going to fall off. You do not matter. You do not matter because you have no idea how to resonate with normal people who are ultimately the people that are going to be voting you into power. Homeland going around with their little leaflets saying white people are being destroyed in the country, all that's led them to do is have to moderate what they are saying, because clearly they found out people are not as racist as they once thought. And even yapper of nonsense Pete North has been writing 10,000 word long essays on Twitter effectively saying, yeah, Farage is right. Like, unironically. I mean, just this first paragraph alone is just embarrassing on so many levels for Pete North. In some respects, Farage was right. Mass deportations at present is a political impossibility. Wow, I said that for months. So what he was saying to Steve Edgington, who is a man I do not trust, by the way. Steve Edgington is probably one of the worst interviewers the right could ask for. I mean that unironically. I think the man's an idiot. Mass deportations at present is a political impossibility, and at the scale envisaged by some, it is a logistical impossibility. Wow, I was saying that for months, and said I had no vision, and said, oh, Pakistan can do it. Well, we're not Pakistan, are we? Unless you're fine with basically starting a low-grade civil war, yeah, exactly. Hare Hills, we couldn't even deal with that, and that was over some kids being taken off their mother because the kids managed to give brain damage to a baby. Not that we have an army to speak of, true. The problem with Farage is that he doesn't think it's a problem and that demographics do not concern him. So we've gone from the magic words of, say, mass deportations, coward, to now you've got to care about demographics or you're not realistic. It's crazy. The man is delivering exactly what Pete North thinks needs to be delivered, but because he doesn't care about demographics, all of a sudden, yeah, he's not our man, don't vote for him. It's also just not crossed his mind for some reason that Farage knows that, you know, he might care about demographics, but he knows you can't say that out loud. It's ridiculous to say that. He knows how to play the media, the dork right don't, and the dork right basically suck at understanding dog whistles. It's so ironic. There he is profoundly wrong on that basis. There is no good reason to vote for Reform. Incredible. Reform are going to deliver exactly what I plan to deliver, but they need to care about demographics. Otherwise, don't vote for them. You are not a serious person, Pete. You're not a serious person. I hope you see this video, and I hope you are deeply humiliated by your very own behaviour over the past few months. Joining Homeland and then saying, man, why is Homeland full of neo-Nazis? Oh, I don't know, man. It's like everyone warned you. Anyone who says Pete North is smart needs to have a look at themselves. This is not the behaviour of a smart man. This is the behaviour of an eternal loser and an eternal contrarian. He's basically Peter Hitchens, but he has no history of actually doing a good job in journalism. Anyway, at this point, it's just clear to me that basically everyone is converging in on the Reform position anyway. Both those to the right of Reform are moving left, and those who want to go even further right, let's say Steve Laws, are falling into irrelevancy. You know, they're getting their Twitter likes and retweets, but at the end of the day, it's mostly from Americans or Indian bots anyway, so it's not a popular position. If it was, you'd have mass calls for the BNP to return, but nobody wants Nick Griffin back, not even the far right, because he keeps talking to Muslims. It's incredible. So, Haryan vindicated, and if this gloating annoys you, I'm sorry, but I promise this will be one of the last times I gloat. But I am going to finish this with a clip from Farage, who is just talking pure facts about the Reform defectors, the people who support Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, and about those two himself, because he's just completely correct on everything, and frankly echoes what I've been saying about them, which is that they're useless and don't know how to win elections. Take it away, Mr. Farage.
Even though I work here, I'm going to be critical of GB News. GB News covered this story obsessively, as if it was some huge story.
It's all his fault.
And it was never a huge story. It was one person who had increasingly been heading in a different direction from us.
I'm pretty much on board with this. I mean, a thing that you need to notice about this as well is that Rupert Lowe did not go on any show. He didn't go anywhere to be at all challenged on anything he said. He went on Dan Wootton's show for Dan Wootton effectively to signal boost his nonsense with absolutely no evidence whatsoever. We've never seen any evidence, by the way, that say Reform briefed the media that Lowe had dementia. If that was really happening, you would have expected some journalists to come out and confirm that, but none did. We've not seen any evidence of it. And I find that deeply suspicious. If Rupert Lowe truly feels like he was actually hard done by, I'd expect him, along with everything else he did, but I'd expect him to go on at least GB News to fight his case. But he never did, and he never did because he knew for a fact that he would be challenged on it and he would not have good answers for any of it because it was such an obvious lie from the start.
Your chairman made it a big story by calling in the police.
Well, he did do that.
Do you think that was a good idea? Nigel Farage, I'm going to challenge you.
I'll pass on that.
There we are.
I'll pass on that.
To be fair to Farage here, I don't think this is him necessarily saying it's a bad idea. I think it's him avoiding commenting on it because the police investigation is still going on. If he says it's a good idea, odds are that actual threats were made and something's going to be actionable, but then obviously he's letting stuff out about the investigation go, which he can't do. If he says no, it's not a good idea, obviously Zai's looks like a liar and someone who unreasonably calls the police simply to get rid of people, and yeah, that's probably actually worse, but then plus commenting on the investigation, bad. But he really starts to make points that I've been making for some time here, and points I think that are completely vindicated.
There's only ever going to be one person, and the upshot of this, what it really tells you is that X is not the real world.
Yeah. Correct.
You know,
Twitter as it was now.
Twitter as it was is not the real world.
Yeah, because you've got to realise, especially from what I've seen on X and Twitter, there has been a concerted effort from practically everyone. And I mean high-profile people as well. You know, people like Adam Wren, who I can't remember what think tank he works for, but certainly seems to be more on the Tory side. You had people like, obviously, Ben Habib pushing this quite a lot, Dan Wootton as well. All these people trying to spread all this gossip and drama on X and make out Nigel and Zia to be the worst political actors ever. And then what I was doing on my channel was just going through the evidence and trying not to comment on things until we had conclusive evidence of the facts at hand and of the situation at hand. And wouldn't you know it, going forward with that mindset, it turns out that I effectively had the most nuanced take on all these things, and as it turns out, what has happened is quite close to what I predicted. The only thing that's different is that Reform did much better in these elections than otherwise stated. X, Twitter, largely not the real world. If it is the real world, it's from the left wing. Because ultimately they still have institutional backing. You cannot use leftist tactics when you have no institutional backing. It's stupid. It's never going to work. People will, and did in fact, just ignore you. And what are Ben and Rupert going to do now? Well, Rupert said that he's not going to be an independent forever. God knows what he's going to do. If he joins the Tories, it'll be the funniest thing in the world. The one man who got on board the Titanic as it was sinking. But the Integrity Party? I can't see it going anywhere. I don't know why they'd bother. You know, 200 members already, great. Well done. You know, that's 0.1% the number of members that Reform have, and it has even less of a percentage of their votes. It's going to be embarrassing. Once again, this is a case of people trying to claim that Farage kicked them out of the party, that Farage was impossible to work with and a snake and all that, and it turns out they were just largely useless people. Even this fundraising for an inquiry that he's got a few MPs to sign up for, you know, where's that gone? Not heard about that in a while. They made it over 500,000, great. Your average national inquiry costs tens to hundreds of millions. And you have absolutely no state power whatsoever to compel witnesses. So what are you going to do? Keep it in the headlines? Great. Lucy Powell has done more to keep it in the headlines than you by being an idiot. You do not need to spend that type of money to keep something in the headline that you can keep in the headline for free. It's absurd. And I am willing at this point to be quite dismissive of it, to be quite frank with you. I am more listening to the Maggie Oliver side of things, where they will go for judicial reviews and cheaper but more effective lawfare on the whole thing. She seems to know what she's doing. Rupert Lowe seems to be a attention seeker. That's the end of it.
Would you have him back now in the party, Rupert Lowe, after all of this? Ben Habib, is there a way back for Ben?
Over my dead body.
We'll hear it.
Based, yes. Why would you let in people who have been openly stabbing you in the back? You might not feel the stab because of how little they actually matter, but yeah, why would you let people openly counter-signalling the party? And in fact, Rupert Lowe's going down the whole, I'm going to take them to court for publishing a Casey's document. He's just trying to hit the party with little bits of attrition. I wouldn't be shocked if there are donors out there saying, don't worry, I'll cover those court costs for you. It actually wouldn't shock me because of how much people actually want things to change and see that change within Reform. But there's Rupert Lowe using his millions to try and damage Reform. Well, of course he's not coming back. What do you mean?
Piece saying you didn't deserve your victory. Did you see it?
I mean, I'm sorry, you get these small, very insignificant people who
Say what you think, Nigel.
who think they're more important than they are. They're frankly nothings. There you are.
And I have to say, I agree with him. You might think that this is very pompous of him and he's looking down on people. Well, I think he earned it after that, after that performance, let alone of last week. But over the past few months, the man has been non-stop everywhere in the country, visiting all these places that have elections, meeting with people, meeting with voters, knocking on doors, doing his little funny adverts about potholes and things like that. He's been non-stop. What have Ben and what have Rupert Lowe done for the past few months? Nothing even close to that. Going around the media that will let them, mostly alternative media, saying absolutely absurd things like this. Saying things like this.
And you can't get the right people if you have a despot, a narcissistic, prickly, adolescent despot in charge of Reform. And that's what Nigel is. Nigel is a problem for Reform. He's not the answer.
And Rupert Lowe's happy to co-sign things like that, and he's disappearing largely into irrelevancy. You know, he'll get relevant every now and then when more news of the inquiry comes out, but overall, who's gonna care? Honestly, give it 5 years, he'll be kicked out of Great Yarmouth, he'll probably go into retirement, who's gonna care? Same with Ben Habib, you're not getting anywhere with these new parties and splinter groups, it's embarrassing.
Were you confident, Nigel, all the time throughout that process that it was going to go that way?
Of course. Well, I was confident that Rupert Lowe and the alt-right Tommy Robinson supporters on X, weren't much of a benefit to us. I was confident about that. I was confident it was the right thing to do. I knew it would dent us in the short term, but no more than dent us. But, look at the image of the party now.
That was 100% what he was thinking. This was 100% what I said he would be thinking. This was 100% what I knew would happen. I'm sorry, Tommy Robinson is not popular with the general public. People who are supportive of him understand he's toxic and understand why Reform went the direction they did. Those people who are loud on Twitter, they don't know what they're talking about most of the time, I'm afraid to say. I've gone largely off the online, right? We've got to a point where we started winning and everyone started having to go down an eternal black pill, we got to lose all the time route. Because frankly, if these problems do get solved, that's their money gone. Or at least they have to put more effort in to get their money so that they're not just black pill merchants to everyone who gives them super chats and pays for subscriptions and what have you. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to give you accurate and informed analysis on situations as they go on. I think from everything that has happened, I have been 100% vindicated. I don't know what more evidence and proof you would need. Right-wing splinter groups have been completely humiliated, as I say, to the point where they're all now effectively having to move to the Reform position of moderating and tempering their voice. It's incredible how what I said for months and months and months and months has been proved to be absolutely true, and it is the only way forward. It happened with the Swedish Democrats, it's happened with Trump, believe it or not. If you go very hard line, it makes people feel a bit too, oh, you're a bit too Nazi, I don't like it, and I won't vote for you. Nigel Farage went the opposite direction, said, don't worry, we are here to steer the ship, we will deal with your big problem with illegal migrants, we will make sure that legal immigration is brought right down as well. These are massive problems, here's all the evidence for it. We are going to have sensible policy for you that we are drip feeding you the details of, because that is obviously the best way to do it. Drip feed policy as you come up to elections, it gets people pumped and motivated and they want to vote for you. And as I was leafleting, apart from the odd person who told me to grow up and not vote for that man, largely people completely understood what Reform was about and were lending their vote. And I hope the councils do a good job, and as I say, completely vindicated from the sensible right. Trust the plan. That is what you should do. That is what I have been doing. So far, I've had no reason to be disappointed. Anyway, I have no doubt in my mind that my near future videos are mostly going to be more blackpilling than this. It's been a hell of a weekend, folks. I've not felt this good about elections since, obviously, Boris Johnson won his in 2019. I know how disappointed I got with that. I'm aware that it can all go wrong. But until I have a reason to start doubting Farage, I'm going to keep going. He largely seems to have his head screwed on. He largely seems to be effectively doing mostly what I have been saying he should do and probably is doing. And clearly, it is working. As I say, listen to me. Rest of the online right are crazy and do not understand how all this works. I am your route to better and decent analysis. Please do, as I say, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Become a channel member as well, please. I mean, it really does help out the channel, along with sending super chats and super thanks. Those are really great ways to help the channel. And frankly, with how vindicated I am at the moment, I have absolutely no problem saying, yeah, you keep paying for this, I'll keep making more analysis, and as you will keep seeing, it's largely accurate, and I'm largely making good predictions. In fact, I'm underselling how well Reform are doing at the moment, but hey, everyone is. Anyway, that's the personal shilling out of the way. Obviously, tomorrow we will be having some Tosh news, where I have no doubts that I will be this smug yet again. And then on Thursday, I will be playing Subnautica again, carrying on with that gaming stream, which obviously I'm going to be doing every week now. Videos out as and when I can make them, and, well, that's it for shilling. So all there is to say now is that that's everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.